Hello, hello. Welcome to the stream. My name is Evan Freiberger, and today we're going to be talking about Tropical Storm Beryl, who is currently out there swirling a little bit. You can see it looks a lot different since the last time that I went live. This storm actually came pretty close to the Cayman Islands, moved into the Yucatan Peninsula, and is now officially in the Gulf of Mexico. You can see we just had an update here from the National Hurricane Center. We should have a new one coming in. Yeah, a new one just came in as of 7 p.m. There we go. So that was about a minute ago. We just got a new update from this storm. And as you can see, it currently has 65 miles per hour winds in them. Nothing compared to the 140 mile per hour winds that we were talking about a little while ago. And max gusts of up to 75 miles per hour. But here's the kicker here. We've been talking about that northern shift happening with this storm. And yeah, it's happened. And it's happened quite a bit. And in fact, we've already got hurricane watches out there for parts of Texas with this storm, as you can see. All the way from South Texas, going up towards Corpus Christi, Port Aransas, Port Lavaca, Palacio, all needs to be watching the storm. That's pretty much what it means. You need to watch out for a hurricane. As you can see, this thing is expected to slowly try to get its act together as it pulls into the Gulf of Mexico. And we'll kind of go over what some of the different models are saying in just a little bit. But as you can see on the hurricane track map here, if we come all the way up to the north, I mean, look at this. We have really anywhere from southern Texas all the way into Louisiana, the same kind of area we've been circling here for a while, mainly because that's what the spaghetti models have been saying. And now that we're a little bit closer to this, getting close to the United States, we are going to see the cone kind of shift and expand in relation to those spaghetti model plots that we've been looking at. But yeah, I mean, it's still kind of a wait and see. There's a couple different scenarios with this storm, and we'll talk about them during this forecast. But first off, how is everybody doing right now? How's everybody doing? Where are you guys tuning in from? I am doing pretty well. I've been kind of working all day trying to get moved into my old house. Made a lot of progress on that. I've still got a couple of things that I need to do. Hopefully, I'll be able to finish that mostly tomorrow. I don't think I'm going to have to go live for severe weather tomorrow at all. Doing well. That's good. Central Florida, yeah. Thankfully, we're not talking about Florida with this storm. Yes, it is in the Gulf of Mexico. As you can see, if we zoom out here, this kind of area here is the Gulf of Mexico. And yeah, it is firmly now in the Gulf of Mexico. You can see that center of pressure is literally just off the coast here of the Yucatan Peninsula. So as of literally just moments ago, this center of pressure is now officially in the Gulf of Mexico. And, looking at it, we're not really seeing a whole lot of reds because there's not a whole lot of deep convection. This storm has been dealing with some increased amount of shear. It's been dealing with land friction, the lack of warm ocean waters, but that's going to change over the next few days. And this could eventually strengthen into a Category 1 hurricane. Some scenarios are even painting a little bit more of a grimmer picture. I mean, 90 mile per hour winds, that's pretty close to a Category 2. If this thing goes a little bit more to the north, I think we're talking about a stronger hurricane personally. But we'll kind of go over all of that in today's forecast. But yeah, let's come over to here. Let's check out some of the latest data on the storm. As you can see, this thing has a current pressure of 994 millibars. So nothing in compared to, what we were talking about not too long ago when we were talking about 930s, 940s. We're way up there in the pressure, and that's why the winds have come way down. Got max sustained winds of 60 miles per hour with this storm. In terms of the forecast discussion, let's kind of read that over real quick, kind of just talk about what the latest update here. This literally just came out. Beryl has weakened below hurricane strength while crossing the northern portion of the Yucatan Peninsula. Satellite imagery shows that that the cloud tops of the central convection have warmed, except for one small area just northeast of the center. So that would be, they're talking about how, when we're looking at this kind of satellite, what we're seeing is the cloud tops of the storm. And the colder they are, the redder and blacker and whiter, the colors look on this color palette here. So as you can see, we don't have any reds, we barely have any oranges, and we have a lot of greens out there, and that's because those cloud tops have warmed. So that's what they're talking about here on this update. The radar data from Cancun shows that the rain bands near the center have become less organized. The initial intensity is reduced to somewhat uncertain, 55 knots. So they're not exactly sure just how strong this storm is yet. And there's a reason for that. They actually have a plane inside of the storm right now. We'll be talking about that and the latest data from that as well. But yeah, there's a little change in the philosophy or the meteorology of the track forecast for the next 12 hours or so. BERYL should be steered generally west-northwestward. So you see how they say that generally, uncertainty. They're putting all these words in there because, believe it or not, even though this thing is not really, we're talking, if this exact track were to happen, a landfall here within the next 3 days. And unfortunately, there's a couple of scenarios that can happen with this storm. We could be talking about, just exactly what is forecasted here, which is this thing gets pretty close to Category 2, doesn't quite get there, and goes into Corpus Christi. Or it goes to the right, and then it spends a little bit more time in the warmer waters off of the coast of Texas, and it becomes potentially even a major hurricane again before it goes into landfall. The kind of crappy thing about this is when this storm decides to strengthen and where it ends up going, it's gonna be, at max like maybe 1 to 2 days of lead time. So it's gonna, I feel if this thing does somewhat rapidly intensify, which again isn't guaranteed, it's actually a pretty low chance. Just depends on where this storm goes. We'll be looking at the models to see what they're saying right now in just a bit. But we're gonna have a couple scenarios, and there's not gonna be a whole lot of lead time with this storm. It's moving pretty quick up to the west-northwest at around 15 miles per hour. And, by the time this thing decides, hopefully kind of the best case scenario, at least for a strong hurricane impact of like a Category 3 or 4, if this thing does significantly re-strengthen, the best case scenario would actually be it strengthening early, so that, people know its strength and they have time to react. Kind of the worst case scenario is if this thing kind of peters about here, kind of looks like it's going to be a weak storm, and then all of a sudden, it starts to take that northerly track and then rapidly intensifies somewhere in this area. Then we only have like a day of lead time. So we'll have to see what happens. It could be a surprise storm. It could just go exactly as forecasted. So we'll see. But as you can see, exactly as forecasted doesn't really have much meaning in this scenario. We're talking about a cone of uncertainty by the time it hits land of 270 miles here. As we go a little bit further, that cone of uncertainty expands about to 500 miles. So there's a lot of uncertainty. The more miles you have, the more uncertainty there is. But so it's going to be one of those scenarios where we could, kind of have to rush to prepare. I really don't think it's time to significantly prepare anywhere on this coast, except for maybe down here. I would start doing those initial preparations, but I don't think it's in no time or meaning or anything like that. I don't think the entire Texas coast should be going to, or Louisiana, parts of the Louisiana coast should be going to the supermarket and buying up a bunch of water and toilet paper and all that kind of stuff right now. I just think we need to wait, unfortunately, a day. I would, if you want to do some preparation, just be prepared and have a shopping list ready just in case, the cone starts to narrow down on your area. But as of right now, I just think there's too much uncertainty to be spending hundreds to thousands of dollars preparing for this thing, given the fact that we really don't know where it's going yet. But let's kind of try to figure that out to the best of our abilities. Let's see what the models and the spaghetti models are saying here. So here's the kind of the main suite of models and what they think. Most of them are actually kind of tight here. They're all kind of bundled going into the Corpus Christi area. So, there is a little bit of a tightening here on this model in particular. So, if this was the only model and, every time that these models tightened, that would be the track, then, there wouldn't be as much uncertainty. But we look at a lot more models than that. And as you can see, as we go over to the GEFS, those tracks are a lot wider. We have a track that goes all the way up here into Houston. We got a track that goes all the way down here in Mexico. And then we got tracks all spread out in between there. But you can see the averages of the, oops, I hate it when I press that. The averages of the tracks bring this into, right around, I think that's just north of Corpus Christi. Yeah, so it's a little bit just north of Corpus Christi there. So, definitely a widespread still with this, some of these model runs. Let's come back down here. This is the GEPS tracks here. And as you can see, the good news is, I guess, for Louisiana is that none of these ensembles right now have a lot of tracks pointed at you. In fact, I don't think there's exactly zero tracks, at least out of these ensembles. I don't have access to the Euro ensembles, but yeah, I mean, as you can see, definitely a some agreement on some of these models of somewhere along the eastern Texas Gulf of Mexico coast there. So, it does seem increasingly likely that Texas is going to get impacted by this storm. I really do feel like the further north we go with this thing, the stronger it's going to be, and the further south we go, the weaker it's going to be. We going all the way down here. You can definitely it's not going to have as much time to strengthen. It's going to go into land earlier. The waters down there aren't as warm. So, it won't be as strong as a storm if that's going to be the case. But here's the latest, model intensity guidance. And as you can see, most of the models are kind of in agreement on a category, as on a tropical storm here, with a couple models bringing it all the way up into category 1 strength, and one model, an outlier model, bringing this as a strong category 1 strength. So as you can see, at least the Hurricane Center with Tropical Storm BERYL is a little bit bullish. And the reason that they're a little bit bullish is probably because, the waters are pretty warm up here. If we get any moment of, a weakening of shear, this storm could try to potentially, increase in strength quite quickly. So it's one of the things we got to watch out for. But, as you can see, the general consensus keeps this at around a tropical storm. So we'll have to see what ends up happening. As it gets closer, it's just going to be one of those things where we got to watch, do updates, every day, and just kind of keep you guys in the loop as things could change quite rapidly. Let's come back over here to the models here real quick and kind of look at, looks like still have Netflix up. I was watching a show called Alone. It's a really cool show. They basically put people in the middle of nowhere, and whoever survives the longest wins $500,000. I'd recommend it. But yeah, so that's that. So let's kind of go over the latest models. Let me take off the, at least I want to take off the cone of uncertainty so we can see the models pretty well here. And yeah, let's go over here to this, and we'll go first the HWRF model and see what it's saying. It's still, yeah, it is still kind of wait and see, as much as I would love to come on here and be like, well, bing, bang, boom, we can look at all this. And yeah, it's going to exactly hit latitude 345, longitude 267 at at exactly, 7:58 and 2 milliseconds time. I wish we could do that, but unfortunately, we're still uncertain. It really just depends on how this interacts with the shear environment and how strong it can get. If it gets stronger, it's going to be a little bit more resistant to the shear and some of the pulling. But yeah, so here is the HWRF. And as you can see, as this kind of comes up the coast here, it tries to organize a little bit. And you can really see it tries to organize a decent amount. And it brings it a little bit north of Corpus Christi, somewhere near Port Lavaca, just to the east of Port Aransas. And this isn't a super organized storm by any means, but definitely could be let's go see what the winds are as it comes into right before it makes landfall on that northern edge. Yeah, let's go see what that looks like. So yeah, we're talking anywhere, yeah, about a strong Category 1 hurricane from the HWRF, and it's saying landfall near Port Lavaca. Now, again, this is one model, so let's go look at another one. Because you got to look at multiple models to kind of get a consensus here on what this storm can do. So looking kind of similar on this model as well. That moves off to the north and east, stays kind of a little bit north of the track, it seems. Continues, even further, and then it goes up to the north quite quickly. So this is a lot more of a north track here from the HMON model. And let's see, what kind of strength we are seeing at the surface, at least according to the winds. Yeah, kind of in the same area around just into that tropical force or tropical storm force and maybe a hurricane, a Category 1 hurricane at this point. So that's two models in the Category 1 hurricane camp. And also this brings landfall, kind of near Port Lavaca there and Montagorda Bay. So a little bit of agreement there on these models. But, these models do tend to agree with each other. Sometimes they get a little bit far apart. Yes, of course. Yeah. You don't want to say will, definitely is going to happen when there's this much uncertainty. I don't know what the storm's going to do. To be quite frank, and no one has a crystal ball on it. Anybody, a lot of people are going to be, saying, I think it's going to hit Houston. And they're not saying that out of any, calculated or, expertise or anything like that. They're just saying that so that Houston clicks on their thumbnails or their, or their, or their articles. Same with Corpus Christi. You're probably going to see a lot of people cherry pick models and the only ones that hit Corpus Christi or Houston. So just be aware of that. That will happen online. It happens for every hurricane that comes close to the United States. So here is the GFS. Let's check out the GFS's scenario here. See where it brings the storm. But eventually we will get some good consensus. It's just kind of a weak storm right now. So it's kind of hard to tell, how much it will strengthen and then how much it will interact with land. So yeah, the GFS brings us a little bit closer to Corpus Christi. It looks like Corpus Christi would probably get some decent winds out of this scenario. I can't look at the surface winds, but I can look just above the surface. And yeah, even just above the surface, we're talking anywhere from like 70 to 80 miles per hour. So probably, a weaker hurricane around like 70 to 80 mile per hour winds near the surface with that scenario and closer to Corpus Christi there. So as you can see, there's decent model spread, but a lot of them are bringing it into mainly this area here, which is probably why this is where the first hurricane watches are. The main suite of models are kind of all agreeing somewhere in and around the Corpus Christi area, but there's a big difference, right? From being close to the storm, like if it makes impacts over there near Port Lavaca, we could be talking about. All right, let's go back over to that scenario on this model real quick. If it really makes that landfall over there near Port Lavaca, which again is not certain, so just take this with a grain of salt. We're just trying to see if we can see any hints of some patterns that we can delve into. But yeah, if it makes impact over there near Port Lavaca, that's where the main winds are going to be. This thing isn't going to have too big of a wind field. I mean, tropical storm force winds are not too crazy. I mean, yeah, you'd be talking like 50 something mile per hour winds over there near Corpus Christi, 40 to 50 mile per hour winds over there near Bay City, maybe some, tropical depression force winds all the way up there near Galveston. But the main area where the strongest winds are going to be within like a 20 to 50 mile span here. So, it's still kind of forecasted to be a pretty compact storm, but the tropical storm force wind field could be a little bit larger as it approaches the United States. So we'll have to see, but that's what the models are currently saying at this point. We're just going to have to wait and see until they get into a main agreement. I don't think I have any more models that we can look at. No, I don't. But yeah, that is that. We also have a plane out there as well. So let's kind of talk about or see if that plane is getting any data that we can show you guys. That's going to be helpful. Assuming it remains only a Cat 1. I mean, there's no reason to assume otherwise, at least for now. All the models are saying that this either stays a tropical storm or a category 1. So there's really no reason to assume anything else. The data is pointing to a weaker, at the very most, a weak hurricane. But, if we get that significant northern shift right before and it stays over those warmer waters for a little bit longer, then yeah, we could maybe be talking about a stronger storm. But for now, most of the models are in somewhat of agreement that this thing stays a or a much weaker storm. But again, we're still pretty far out. This is quite the large spread here on the models, so it's a lot of these. Like 99% of these models are going to be wrong. It's only going to be one of these models that gets it right. So we do have to figure out eventually. It's not really a tight spread there, so it seems like the only kind of tight agreement on this storm is that it's going to continue to weaken over the next 12 hours, which kind of seems to be the case if you look at this thing on satellite underneath me. It is certainly looks like it's falling apart. I mean, the thing's barely even there. I'm not really seeing much in terms of anything with this storm. It's not looking like Hurricane Beryl anymore, which is why it's not. It's Tropical Storm Beryl. But yeah. So that's what we're seeing right there with the intensity guidance with the storm. One thing I do want to kind of check out here is we're going to look at the shear environment that's going to be present for this storm as it comes up into the United States. So let's kind of go bring that up here. Oh, I accidentally came out of it. There we go. We'll go here, and then we'll come over to the upper dynamics and this. So this is going to be the wind shear for the storm. There's that low pressure system. And as you can see, we also have another little low or kind of gyry thing happening over here. And that is bringing a decent amount of shear that is interacting with Tropical Storm Beryl there. And it's going to keep it on the weaker side, at least according to the GFS. And yeah, I mean, that kind of interacts with that shear. And then it looks like kind of the southern side of the trough kind of comes down to the south there, interacts with it a little bit more, gets a little bit weaker shear right before landfall. And then you can see that the storm kind of strengthens actually a decent amount right before landfall there. So, it's going to be dealing with shear pretty much its entire life here in the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that shear. If it's any weaker, it might try to strengthen. But, there will be a brief period right before landfall where this thing could strengthen a little bit, especially, if it gets into this shear environment and then kind of jogs off to the north, then we're going to see a stronger hurricane. But, if it kind of goes in the path of what these storms are saying or what the models are saying right now, it's not going to have a lot of time to strengthen. I really don't think that it will have the opportunity, even though that the waters out there are pretty warm. Don't get me wrong, but that's a pretty gnarly shear environment, and it's going to be moving pretty quick. So it's not going to have a whole lot of time to be in that more favorable environment. And who knows how messy this storm will be, how organized the core of the storm will be as it even approaches there, because again, this thing's going to get ripped apart, and it is right now. You can clearly see it on satellite that this storm is getting ripped to shreds by that shear, by that little area of some higher shear over there. It's going to be ripping this storm apart, and who knows? I mean, some models even have this weakening and never hitting category 1 strength. So again, a lot of disagreement along with the models right now. It is really hard to tell what this storm is going to do, but the bottom line here is that as we monitor it and as we assess, one of the things that is also not going to be certain, as this is going to be a weaker storm, is where that core kind of compacts and kind of tries to get its act back together. If it gets its act back together on the northern side of this cone, then we're probably going to have to pay attention to this storm a little bit more. Hopefully the shear will be a little bit higher than anticipated. If it's not, then we might see a stronger storm, especially as it will have a longer time. Because again, if we come up here and kind of, if we come back over to this scene over here, and we come over to the analysis tools, go over to the ocean analysis, and then kind of look at the, see the tropical Atlantic. No, not that. Which one is it? Was they had like just a, yeah, that's good enough. But yeah, if we look at the Gulf of Mexico here, I mean, the pocket in which the warmest waters is right here, and then like that's water's warm enough to be like, huh? Is in this area. That's some really warm water. 30 to 31 degrees Celsius. That is plenty. That is like jet fuel for the storm. So and where it is right now is actually in some cooler waters, right there off of the Yucatan Peninsula coast. So if this thing goes like this, it's going to get into those warmer waters, but briefly, and it's only going to have like a small time frame here to strengthen before it goes in and around the area, like north, south, or into Corpus Christi there, if it does take that path. But if it does something like this, as you can see, it's going to have a lot longer of a time frame in that lower shear environment and over some warmer waters. The worst case scenario with this storm, which again, there isn't actually any model runs that are saying, but like hypothetically speaking, if this thing were to take a track just like this and then recurve like that and then go into like southern Louisiana within a low shear environment, would probably be a category 5. I mean, that would spend a crap ton of time in that oh wow, that's really hot and jacuzzi temperature water there, and in the low shear environment. Yeah, a storm like that would be one that you got to worry about, that rapid intensification. But as of right now, none of the models are really painting a scenario where this storm is going to have really too much time to strengthen. So we'll have to see. But those are the different kind of scenarios we got to watch out for. And again, by the time this thing gets closer to land here, it's going to be, we're not going to have a whole lot of time to prepare. Where it makes that northern turn, if we come over, back over to the spaghetti models over here, it for most of its life, it's going to kind of be looking like it's going into southern Texas. And that northern turn is going to happen 48 hours from now. And then by 72 hours, this thing's going to be making landfall. So we're talking about 24-hour notice of knowing whether this storm is going to take a little bit more of a dangerous track or not. And so it's definitely a scenario, if we do get a sharper turn to the north, that a lot of folks aren't really going to have a lot of time to prepare, and the storm could strengthen a little bit faster than what a lot of people would be comfortable with. So, I would say the best advice that I can give you guys right now is to just relax. For one, you don't need to be doing any significant preparations right now. Again, if you look at this cone of uncertainty, you can tell that ain't nobody got a clue where this thing is going to make landfall as of right now. The averages are bringing it in this pink area where we have the hurricane watches, but again, it really just depends on how this storm reorganizes, or if it even reorganizes in the first place. So, I'm sorry. I wish I could give you more answers. But the bottom line is, another thing that I want to note or talk about with the storm is that as it makes it up to the north and east, there will be a tornado threat, like on the eastern side of the storm as well. So that's going to be another thing that we're going to have to watch in the northeastern portion of this storm. So no matter where it makes landfall, just know that on the northeastern portion, you're probably going to be, in a decent tornado risk. So let's say this thing goes down into Mexico, still could have a tornado risk for Texas. If this goes south of Corpus Christi, I actually saw a post today on Twitter. They called Corpus Christi Corpus Crispy. Can we just rename the city to that? I think it's pretty crispy down there. But yeah, if it goes down south of Corpus Christi, there's going to be a tornado threat up in here. If it goes south of Houston, there's going to be a tornado threat up in Houston. So, that's another thing that we're going to have to watch out for. Also, storm surge, flooding rains are going to be an issue with this. Still a little bit unclear how much flooding rains, but we do have kind of our initial rain forecasts out of this storm. So let's kind of talk about that. In and around the Corpus Christi area, if it goes on that average track, we could see anywhere between 6 and 8 inches of rain there. Talking about 4 to 6 inches of rain here, and further inland could also have a decent chance of seeing some flooding with 6 to 8 inches in between Waco, Houston, over there near like College Station, Huntsville. But Tyler, Texas, I think is a little north of there. But yeah, so we got to watch out for some flooding with this storm as well. Do we have any storm surge forecasts? Yes, yeah. So we do have some peak storm surge forecasts as well. And then again, this is mainly just for that average track that we have right now that brings it somewhere in this area at landfall. And if that scenario does happen, we could see 2 to 4 feet of storm surge in between mouth of Rio Grande and Baffin Bay. 3 to 5 feet of storm surge in between Baffin Bay and Sargent. Montagorda Bay, 3 to 5. Corpus Christi Bay, 3 to 5. So again, these are going to change though. If it's a stronger storm, we're going to see higher storm surge amounts. If it's a weaker storm, we're going to see lower storm surge amounts. But bottom line is, don't be on the beach. That's too much water. Yeah, it's a lot of water. It's going to cause some coastal flooding. You certainly don't want to be in a lawn chair or in a beach chair with a towel trying to get a suntan as this thing makes landfall. As anything, a tropical storm to a hurricane. Definitely don't want to be out there. Could be some dangers. Also, swimming beforehand could be some riptides too. So even even a day before could be some dangerous swimming conditions as well. You're in the Alabama Golf Course and water temp. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the water temperatures. Let me see if that's still up. Yeah. So the water temperatures all along the Gulf of Mexico, and kind of getting a little bit distracted here. But I mean, anywhere in this area, if we get a storm enter into this area with weak wind shear, and and it's like organized enough and it has enough time to organize, like the worst case scenario I think for 2024, as long as we have these really warm temperatures, would be a slow moving storm make it into this area in a low shear environment. That's just a recipe for rapid intensifications and a strong hurricane. Also over here, like say we get a system maybe go, kind of like this, to stay kind of weak even in a lower shear environment, could strengthen to like a category 1 or 2. But once it gets into this area, that's jet fuel for the storm. Also, in the future, if we get a storm try to go up into this region here, you can see that we also have another tongue of very warm waters off of the coast of South Carolina, North Carolina, and eastern Georgia. So we got to watch out for those scenarios in the future as well. But, as of right now, we don't have anything in the forecast for those. But I just wanted to kind of paint a picture, like all of those waters, 30 to 31 to 32 degrees Celsius, ocean waters, that is like jet fuel for these hurricanes in a low shear environment. If you have a higher shear environment, the storm's going to struggle. If the storm's not organized and it's in a high shear environment, it's going to struggle. Kind of like what this one is right now. It's in a high shear environment, and it's also in some cooler waters. So this thing's going to get ripped to shreds here, and where that center of pressure reforms, if it does try to strengthen eventually, is going to play a pivotal role on where this thing ultimately goes in the future. So that's what we're going to be watching for over the next day or so. I'm going to try to do another forecast tomorrow, like afternoon, maybe, or like tomorrow, like later morning, like sometime around like 10 or 11. I'm thinking about doing that, and then I'll do another update at the nighttime. But I really do want to try to leave some time for me to, finish some of my moving preparations. New member, let me check it out. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm getting a little bit preoccupied. Hey, thank you, Wayne Everhart, for becoming an EF3 member. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm looking at chat now because I'm pretty much done with the majority of the forecast. So we'll just answer questions here. Does anybody have any questions about Tropical Storm BERYL? Also, there is a plane out there. I just realized there is a plane. Okay, no problem, Courtney. Wonder how the high pressure system to the east in the west will affect it. It really just depends on the strength of the storm. A stronger storm will be a little bit more resistant. Or it will have some higher cloud tops. It'll be a little bit more resistant to weakening, but it will kind of be less resistant to the steering. As a stronger storm can, that has more levels of the atmosphere in which that shear can affect it and turn its path. But yeah, our latest airplane reconnaissance data here is sitting at 998. So yeah, this thing is weak. This is a weak storm right now. But again, don't let that fool you. It could stay like this. It's BERYL, and I feel like the problem with BERYL is I feel like the problem with Beryl is that it's done so many incredible feats that people are going to continue to be like, oh, but it's Beryl, so it's just destined to do some crazy stuff because it's just Beryl. Beryl always does that, regardless of what the forecast models say. And I mean, kind of, yeah, that's been the case, but I just feel like going saying all that kind of crap when it's approaching the United States. I just don't feel like that's helping anybody. It's like if the forecast models are wrong, then do more forecasts, update more, and tell people, hey, the forecast models are looking wrong. I can say that now and be okay to admit, when you're wrong, and just keep people updated. There's no need to be like, watch out, it's Hurricane Beryl or it's Tropical Storm Beryl. You guys know Beryl. It's gonna barrel into Texas and just randomly strengthen for no reason to a category 10 hurricane and blow up the east coast of Texas and Louisiana. It's just like I feel like people have just been really like even the people that I thought were somewhat smart in weather, they keep on doing this face with this storm like, what is it doing? How is it doing that? I'm so surprised, even though it kind of has been acting just as forecasted. I don't know why that's been happening. A little bit of hysteria with the storm, which I get it. When you get these really strong, unexpected, honestly, record-breaking storm, the hysteria does grow. But it's been interesting to see how far it'll spread. Do I think Beryl will hit Oklahoma? No. You guys are in the cone of uncertainty, but that's mainly, you're probably going to get like a post-tropical depression up there. I don't really see many scenarios where you guys get actually impacted by a tropical depression, but on the extreme northern portion of this cone, I mean, some scenarios there for Dallas, I guess, Balsair City, Monroe to maybe get a tropical depression, which again, we've covered storms with hurricane force winds that have gone through the Dallas area and through Tyler, Texas, and through New Boston. If this thing's a tropical depression, by the time it gets to you, you're going to be like, oh, wow, that was really weak. I can barely feel this. Let's see. You got a barrel of monkeys. There you go. Yeah, barrel. Uh, Hurricane Beryl is just full of monkeys, and it's just gonna throw monkeys all across the eastern coast of the United States. And can I check out the storms? Yeah, maybe we can look at it. I mean, there's just some severe weather in New Mexico right now. I mean, there's nothing else going on in terms of severe weather. Oh wait, no, there's another one over here. In Pennsylvania, little damage report. It's just marginal weather. If you live in Erin and Van Eaton, just be indoors and away from windows until that thunder is far away from you. Till the thunder sounds quiet or the rain stops. Well, either one's fine. Won't be impressed until Beryl does a barrel roll. Uh, I mean, yeah. Don't think we're gonna see it do a loop de loop. Sometimes hurricanes and tropical storms can do a little bit of a loop de loop. I think there will be waterspouts and tornadoes for Texas. Even if this thing makes landfall as a weak tropical storm, there usually is still enough vorticity on the northeast corner to cause a tornado threat. I mean, we had a landfalling tropical storm, I think somewhere in here, and it brought tornado warning after tornado warning. I don't know. I think we only have like one. We had like 20 tornado warnings that day, and only one confirmed tornado out of that. So it causes spin in the atmosphere is the bottom line. Has some storm blow through with 70-mile-per-hour winds. Yeah, exactly. If this thing does for some reason make it into southern Oklahoma as a tropical depression, you guys will probably be outside, knowing you guys, grocery shopping, because it's not going to feel like anything that intense. It's going to be a little breezy. You're like, what? This has no hail? Are you kidding me? No hail? You're telling me just a little bit of rain and 30 and 40 miles per hour. If anything, after this thing makes landfall, it's going to be good news for a lot of folks. Let me go check the drought map, as we're going to be getting a lot of beneficial rain. Let me go to the U.S. drought monitor. Let's go check it out. Yeah. So yeah, if this thing can bring a nice little bit of rain into Oklahoma or like Arkansas, it's only going to be beneficial. And in fact, we really need a tropical depression over here in the southeast. Holy moly, I didn't realize how widespread. I'm back in bad drought. Dang it. Yeah, we got a lot of widespread drought all the way up to the East Coast, going into the Ohio Valley, also for parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, going into New Mexico. Some pretty severe drought down here in southern New Mexico, going into Fort Stockton, like that area over there in Texas. So a little bit of rain will actually be very beneficial, especially if it can make it all the way up there into Oklahoma. So, I mean, honestly, if you guys do get a tropical depression up there, I'd be saying thank you to Mother Nature, as it's not, I mean, you're barely going to feel it. You guys have had way worse storms. You guys have had tornado outbreaks there in Oklahoma this year. You've had windstorms with like 90-mile-per-hour winds, freaking 4-inch hail happen in your state. Tropical depression, you guys are going to laugh at it. You're going to be like, this is what everybody was freaking out about. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be good for rain. But yeah, for the coast of Texas, though, that's where we've got to watch out for the strongest impacts. Could definitely get something out of it. We'll have to see what ends up happening. But as of right now, man, oh man, this storm is looking weak. It's looking weak, and that latest recon data of a surface pressure of 998, that's a weak storm. That's trying to it's kind of almost barely hanging on. Get it? Barely hanging on to that tropical storm status. It's a little bit on the stronger side of a tropical storm, I guess. What about San Antonio? Yeah, I would say some rain, some beneficial rain. Unless this thing, I mean, I really don't see a scenario because after it hits land, it's definitely going to track more north. So I really don't see a scenario where San Antonio, unless this thing takes a pretty southern track, but that right now seems to be a little bit of a rare scenario. Most likely just some beneficial rain. You're not even going to be in the quadrant where tornadoes are most likely with the storm. So it looks like it's only some good news there that you're in that cone. Rain prediction for the center of the storm. So yeah, so here's the latest rain forecast. Let's go bring that up again. So, you know, really from anywhere from, going into near San Antonio, east of Waco, all the way in this yellow area here. That's going to be 4 to 6 inches. And then in this orange area is going to be 6 to 8 inches. So we could have some decent flooding issues here in this area. But as you can see, as it makes it up into like, Oklahoma, parts of Arkansas, parts of Louisiana, all that's just going to be beneficial rain. Probably won't cause too much flooding issues if the models stay as they are. But again, this isn't set in stone. This is going to shift around. We're going to see these values jump around as we get closer. But 6 to 8 inches can cause some flooding issues. That's for sure. And where we're getting that landfall potentially, especially with this model spread that is putting out these estimated rain fall totals is really putting credibility to that scenario that kind of brings it into Lavaca, Port Lavaca there. So just know that there's a wider spread than that. So these impacts are definitely going to shift around unless we start to get some model agreement here shortly. Is your sister a little bit south of San Antonio be worried? No. I mean, could get some gustier winds, maybe some small power outages here and there. If it's a stronger storm, might see some stronger winds out of it. But I mean, you guys have had some also pretty intense storms up there. It's not going to feel anything similar to that. I'd just be keeping an eye on those rainfall totals. Might get some flooding out of it. I think that would be like kind of the worst impacts there for near the San Antonio area. Will the tropical storm end in a few days since it's weak? No. I mean, it's getting sheared apart. For sure. I think that's something that we can all agree on here. It's getting sheared apart. It looks very weak, but it will enter into a little bit more of a favorable environment. The shear is kind of strong right now. It'll slowly weaken as it approaches the coast, and those water temperatures are going to get a little bit warmer as well. I mean, as of right now, it's sitting in water temperatures that are barely even favorable for a tropical storm to sustain itself, and you can really see that is having an effect on the storm. It's just falling apart. But I have a feeling over the next day or so, we'll see this thing try to make an attempt at reorganization, and by the time we get into the 7th, could be seeing a tropical storm BERYL try to make another attempt back at a Category 1 strength. What's my take on Harlingen? Let me see where Harlingen is. Harlingen, Texas. Um, yeah, I mean, as of right now, most of the models are taking this to the north, so you're going to be out of that tornado risk if that's the case. You are still in the cone of uncertainty, though, so I would definitely pay attention to future forecasts. But if the trend continues, you might even be pulled out of the cone of uncertainty at some point. But if things kind of shift around unexpectedly, you might get a little bit closer to the center where you might see some stronger winds. Some flooding rains would be possible, but it really seems like the most rain is going to be, more north of the center and to the north and east of the center with this storm, according to the latest models. So, and unless this thing makes landfall near in the southern portion of this cone of uncertainty, that's really the only scenario where I see you having any type of tornado threat from this storm. What's the likelihood of coastal Mississippi filling in of it? Pretty darn low. I would say a 1% chance. The only scenario where I see any significant impacts for coastal Mississippi is if this thing goes on the extreme eastern side, could see a tornado develop here in this area. But that's again, there's not a single spaghetti model plot anymore that brings any of its members into Mississippi, at least according, or at least on Tropical Tidbits here. Here's the main suite of models. They don't pull any landfalls there into Louisiana, so that wouldn't be too much of a tornado threat there for Mississippi. None of the models here on the spread brings it into Louisiana. Here on the GEFS, and then none of the models from the GEPS bring it into Louisiana as anything. So it does seem like that scenario is almost pretty much non-existent, the one that I just talked about, but it is certainly something to keep an eye on just in case. You never know. This thing is kind of a weak storm where, if that center of pressure forms here, we're going to see every single one of these models shift north. So just because they're not saying anything right now doesn't mean too much, but I don't think we're going to see that big of a pressure shift if it tries to reorganize. I mean, I just don't think so. It's pretty rare. Will it produce tornadoes in southeast Texas? Well, okay, so how these tropical systems work is they usually have the maximum amount of their vorticity is on the north and eastern portion of the storm. So, if you want to know what your scenario is for a tornado threat, it just depends on where this thing makes landfall. If it makes landfall down here, the tornado threat would be highest for Corpus Christi. If it makes landfall right here, the tornado risk would be higher over there near Victoria. If it makes landfall here, the tornado risk would be highest for Houston and Galveston. All those areas are, all of those scenarios are, I wouldn't say equally as likely, but that's how if you're in that tornado risk is if you're north and east of where the center of pressure is and the landfall is. Twisters are coming. Are you talking about the movie? How do y'all like the new clock, by the way? It kind of runs smoothly, but I'm afraid it's going to be too distracting. Is BERYL the only tropical storm right now? In the Atlantic, yeah. There's nothing else out there. Just BERYL. There is a tropical depression out here, Alita, in the Pacific, but that's about it. Quick spin ups in the stronger rain bands are possible. Exactly. And we got to watch out for that threat. That is also a scenario. This thing could stay relatively weak or be a weak category one, and then we're going to get some of those significant impacts near the center of circulation as it makes landfall, whether it's over here near Victoria, Kingsville, maybe a little bit further north. We'll see. But the tornado threat might be one of the bigger damage producer, a little bit less widespread, but you get an EF1 tornado, or maybe even an EF2 tornado, you could see some quite significant damage out of that sometimes. I can tell you now, it will not take that route. No, you can't. No one can tell anybody that right now. Sorry, that's just not how this stuff works. What category is BERYL? It's not a category. I guess you could give it a category. Its category is tropical storm. It's not a category 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 storm. It's a category, I guess you could say it's category 0. Yeah. Yeah, there you go, nominal. Category -1, yeah. It's crazy how many records BERYL's broken. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just glad, I'm not glad we covered over here near Carrico. We covered over here for Jamaica. And that's where it was breaking all of its records. Obviously, I'm partial, a little bit biased to the United States, but it was devastating for some of these areas. A lot of damage was caused in both of those areas. That made impact also over here near the Yucatan Peninsula. Some damage, not nearly as intense as over there near Jamaica or Carrico, but still caused a decent amount of infrastructure damage there, and some flooding issues. I'm definitely partial to the United States, so I guess we could say I'm a little bit happy, right, that it's not breaking those records in the Gulf of Mexico. So, but not really happy that it impacted so many people here in the Caribbean at all. It's very sad what happened there for a lot of folks. Lives are ruined, displaced, lots of flooding. Yeah, I mean, when we ended the stream, what we thought about that bridge was right. Those flood waters were coming. That bridge we were watching during the Jamaica stream was put completely underwater. Had a bunch of debris that made it down into some of the southern cities and caused some flooding there as well. Yucatan is already a billion. We'll see if those end up panning out. Yeah, thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. Yeah, flat bridge. Yep. Gonna take years for many of these islands to recover. Probably like fully recover, yeah. Tropical tornadoes, definitely a possibility with this storm. Yeah. As it makes it up there. Hopefully within the next day or two, I can come on here and be like, okay, so here's what's gonna happen. But for now, we're still kind of in a wait and see. Wait and see, watch the next forecast alert. I really do not suggest anybody spending hundreds of thousands of dollars preparing for this storm yet. But I would be making that shopping list just in case you need to implement it quick, because, we could get in a scenario where we have to act a little bit quicker. Category 1 of this strength still can cause a decent amount of damage. Definitely need to do some preparations for that to protect your house and livelihood. But in terms of like preparing for like a devastating hurricane or evacuations or anything like that, we're not quite at that period just yet. Again, this thing at the earliest would make landfall on the 8th at 1 a.m. Latest could make landfall on the 9th. Is pressure rising? Yes, the pressure is rising, and rising quite quickly. The last little hurricane plane in there measured a pressure of 998 millibars, which if we come back over here to the page here on the latest update, as of 7 p.m. Was 994. So as you can see, it is rising even further. This thing is getting weaker and weaker and weaker as it is currently over some cooler waters than what it's been over, and it's in a pretty bad shear environment. And I mean, you can just tell so clearly here on the satellite that this storm is a lot less organized than what we were talking about even before it went through to the Yucatan Peninsula. You can barely even see the cloud tops anymore of this storm. It's warmed up so much. Yeah, but David, the problem is with that wording is that none of the models are indicating that scenario right now. So, if that does become evident, that's what I'm saying. Like, if we do end up getting one of those surprise kind of actions with this storm, and it rises like this, and then starts to rapidly intensify. It's probably most likely around in this area. I mean, Houston and the Galveston area and that scenario would only have like a day. And you can extrapolate that across the entire seaboard here. Although I do think rapid intensification would be a lower chance if it goes to the south. So, there's definitely going to be a scenario if this thing does take kind of a weird turn, where we're not going to have too long to prepare. Hopefully, we can get some better model agreement by tomorrow night, and we can take out some of these scenarios and have a better understanding of what's going to happen. But right now, it's just too much. It's too conditional. I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. Yeah, I just keep it real. I just tell you what I see. I don't know why people hype. I'm doing just fine on YouTube, just being real and honest. Maybe other people should try to copy me and just stop lying through their teeth, trying to get attention with all this bull crap, forecasting, fear mongering bull crap. I really hate it. It's something that I've always been against. So, yeah. We're just going to tell it how it is here. If we need to raise an alarm, we would. But as of right now, again, looking at the model spread here, um, we don't have any models here indicating rapid intensification. Not one model. So, I mean, at max, according to the model spread, could be up to category 1 strength. So we'll have to see what ends up happening. This could shift around. If we get a significant northern shift, we'll probably see some of these models increase some in intensity, or it'll just go as it forecasted from here on out, be a weak storm, impact Texas with mainly a tornado threat, a little bit of damaging winds, some flooding being possible. Again, it's just there's a lot of scenarios. And it's best to just kind of keep all those in mind, make a plan for the worst case, and don't implement it until you need to. So we're not Texas. Yeah, yeah. People that say definite, you like anybody that's saying definite words on this storm right now, are. I mean, that's like the opposite of fear mongering, saying it's not going to hit Texas, I guess. But I mean, that's not really helpful. It's just best to just kind of look at the data and communicate it in the best way that you can. Oh yeah, yeah. People are. I mean, It's the first potential, United States hurricane impact. So all the fear mongers are going to be jumping on this and releasing their forecast, crazy thumbnails. Trees flying in the air, tornadoes flying on in the peripherals of the thumbnail, saying, you know, this is this is strange. This is wild. This is gonna be a disaster. This is totally unheard of. What the heck is happening? A category 1 hurricane is hitting the Gulf of Mexico. This has never happened before. I'm so surprised. Now, this happens every year, folks. Happens every year. And no, just because this storm has a history of rapid intensification does not mean it's going to do it again. It's definitely not something what the line of communication should be. Wait and see. We're gonna wade through the data with you guys. We're gonna let you know if anything changes and just be ready to prepare. That's what you need to be doing right now. You do not need, I cannot stress this enough. You do not need to be preparing right now and buying thousands of dollars of stuff here in Port Arthur, Galveston. If anywhere that should slowly start to prepare or consider preparing is over here, where the averages of the models are indicating that this is probably the most likely scenario today. But again, that stuff, it tends to shift sometimes. So even then, you might buy a lot of supplies and then nothing happens. So just keep that in mind. If you do want to get some supplies, keep it light on the finances. And then if this thing ramps up and it becomes more clear, then that's time to, uptick the amount of supplies you buy. Because again, there's so many scenarios where, a tropical storm gets right here. You got those ones on the map here. You get all these people saying prepare now. Then you have somebody up here in Lake Jackson buying like sometimes even $10,000 worth of stuff. I mean, people be putting sandbags around their houses and all that stuff, and because they got fear mongered, they spend $10,000, and then it goes into Corpus Christi or like Raymondville or Forest, and then they just get rain up there. So, that's what we try to hopefully educate you guys about, and then hopefully you can educate your friends about. Yes, a hurricane could hit Texas. It's not a guarantee. And also, it's not time to prepare just yet. People are going to lean to on the more dangerous side of the storm, because not because of being cautious, or I've got to just tell you all the scenarios. No, they're just doing that to get you to watch their streams longer, their TV shows longer. That's all it is. Storm is far from dead. Not, I mean, it's about as close to as dead as it's ever been. I mean, look at it. That's a weak storm. A central pressure of 998. That's a weak storm. That's a weak. We're looking at a weak storm. Yeah, it's not technically dead, but it's about as close. It's almost as close to as dead as a tropical storm can get in the Gulf of Mexico. How did it get smaller? Well, right now, so here's the center of pressure as of the latest. It's just into the Gulf of Mexico here. And if we look over here, let me see if I still have it up. I think I took it off. Let me bring it back up. If we look at the analysis tools and we go over to the let me see if I can get it up here again. Yeah, there we go. We go over to the sea surface temperatures. You can see actually, typically you want around 27 degrees Celsius to sustain tropical activity. And we're right at that threshold there. So it's not the warmest waters, but still technically enough to sustain tropical activity. But if we come over here to the models, and look at the kind of the forecasted shear and what this storm is dealing with right now. Let's go bring this down into the Western Atlantic here, so we can bring up our favorite shear map. You can see these yellows and reds. That's all unfavorable shear. So not only is it in those cooler waters, it's also getting ripped apart by that shear. So that's why it looks like it does. It's just kind of in a really not that favorable environment for a hurricane right now, which is why it's not. The new 0Z models have shifted east. Let me see if the spaghetti model plots are out. Yeah. Spaghetti model plots are out. And yeah, they're still indicating, this is actually a pretty tight spread here. They're indicating somewhere in between Corpus Christi, Port Lavaca, maybe just a little bit to the east of Port Lavaca there. That's a pretty tight spread. So we'll see if that continues to shift or not. In the last frame, you can see the eye forming. No, there's no eye in this storm right now. Tropical storms have been worse than small hurricanes. Yeah, it's so yeah. In terms of the wind impacts, it could be quite weak, but in terms of or it could be strong. I mean, who knows? I mean, again, still a lot of uncertainty. Just telling you guys what I'm seeing, and I'm not trying to speculate too much. But the latest rainfall forecast does have some scenarios here which again are going to be inaccurate right now as this is going to shift around. But bottom line is some areas of 6 to 8 inches, potentially some areas locally higher than that could be possible, which will cause some flooding issues here in like the orange area. So again, these will shift around as we get closer, but the storm will have that capability of producing some pretty decent flooding issues out here. So definitely got to keep an eye on that as well as the storm approaches. See how that the rainfall estimates shift around. The rain could be a big problem, especially with tropical storms. Yep, yep. Yeah, I mean, if you get a rain band that just kind of forms and then just goes over one area forever, you don't need 150-mile-an-hour winds to get that to happen. You can have that. You can actually have that happen without a hurricane, without a tropical system. But it sometimes happens with these tropical storms. Like, for instance, the one that went down here into Mexico caused a decent amount of flooding. Also over there near like the Corpus Christi area saw some flooding there as well. But then you had another tropical storm up here that was a little bit on the drier side, had some drier air wrapping around it, and it caused like 2 to 3 inches of rain max. So, every tropical system has its different flavors of flooding, and it does seem like this one, by the time it approaches the Texas coast, should have a decent amount of moisture and capability to cause some flooding issues for some folks. Probably going to be on the wetter side of tropical storms or hurricanes, depending on what it is as it makes landfall. Storm surge can be an issue. Yeah, I mean it's always going to be an issue, whether you get 1 to 3 feet, or 4 to 5, or even higher. At the immediate coast, the higher the storm surge, the higher it goes inland. But bottom line, rip currents are going to be a thing. Large waves are going to be a thing. Dangerous swimming conditions, the day prior. Are also going to be a thing. So you really don't want to be swimming in the beaches as this thing approaches, and that storm surge is going to be a problem. Even the smaller amounts of storm surge can cause some damage. I mean, it's just nearer to like the close to the beach erosion, all that kind of stuff. Depending on where the houses are and how close they are to the beach, some of those can get impacted even with a weaker system. The piece that broke off form into another storm. I don't understand why I get that question so often now. Last year I didn't have to deal with any of those questions, but no, that's not another tropical storm forming. That is just some rain and thunderstorms. Our tropical storm down here is down here, and it actually has a organized area of surface like lower surface pressures here, which essentially acts like a vacuum kind of, and sucks in all that moisture and heat content out of the ocean, puts it in the atmosphere, and then we start to see some gustier winds in and around the center. This does not have a central area of low pressure. This is most likely some sort of a couple cluster of probably some pretty intense thunderstorms. That's not a tropical storm there, no. But we've been getting that question ever since this thing was over here. Every single time there's been a little thunderstorm off to the north and east, people are like, is that going to be another hurricane? It's like, no, that's not how this works. Hydrate, yeah, I'll get a little bit of water in me. Yeah, not the only one. That would be crazy, but I just don't think we're that far into I don't even think I don't honestly, I'll be honest, I don't know if it's possible or not, but it's definitely not something that has ever happened. So, condition to make Evan's catchphrase. That's not how this works. It's not a bad catchphrase. Is the high pressure weakening? Um, yeah, I think it's still there. Let me pull up the height anomalies here. Yeah, if we go to the high pressure is forecasted to weaken quite a bit, which is probably why this thing's going to try to sneak off to the north. But yeah, you can see this in this red shaded region here. That's that high pressure system. It kind of weakens and kind of gets shimmied off there to the north, and that's what allows this thing to kind of sneak up a little bit further north, as it is a little bit more influenced by this kind of area of lower pressure up there. And that should allow it to kind of sneak up to the north. They're also kind of riding the remainders of that high pressure system as well, kind of bringing it up a little bit to the north. But yeah, it will be weaker, by the time this thing approaches land. I think the trough is stronger than they said it was a few days ago. Um, I mean, we could check some of the latest, some of the like earlier models and kind of look at that. I would say it's a little bit. No, I mean it's kind of about the same. Kind of a weirdly moving trough, I'll say, but yeah. I mean, if you go back far enough, it was a little bit weaker. So I guess the trend would be that that lower pressure system is getting a little bit stronger and maybe sinking a little bit further south than was anticipated. I think you can make that point. Storm isn't for now. Yeah, it's not bothering anybody for now, but we'll have to see how it develops going up to the north. I am interested to see what this thing ultimately ends up doing, as I'm sure everybody is. But as of right now, no crystal balls today, unfortunately. It's like a storm split. Yeah, it's the northern split. Got to watch the southern split for a tornado. But no, essentially what's happening here is we're getting a little area of drier air wrap around, and that is initiating some thunderstorms along the boundary there. I appreciate that, CB. Yeah, thankfully I have a little bit more energy. If you guys can't tell, that rest day, even just one rest day, really goes a long way for me. Like I was feeling, ugh. Like I wasn't burnt out, but I was just tired, man. I was just tired. We were just doing 6 hour live streams for like almost 3 months straight, almost every day. And just getting that one little break, one little day break, and a little bit of fireworks and celebration really went a long way. Luckily, we haven't had too much severe weather to have to cover either. Yeah, I'm feeling a lot more energy. As long as all I got to do until this thing makes landfall is a couple of forecasts, then we're gonna be good to go. That was indeed a grind. Yeah, we did not have weekends for like 3 months. But all right, I think that's going to be it for me. I'm going to keep it short today. Not a whole lot to really talk about other than just kind of broadly going over everything. Again, if you live up here, just make sure that you are weather aware, forecast aware here. We'll have a lot more information hopefully tomorrow that'll be a little bit more helpful, a little bit more definite. Does seem like the models are tightening up a little bit, so hopefully that gives us a better depiction of the reality of the situation. I hate to see these cones of uncertainty so freaking large, as I'm sure you guys hate to see that as well. But yeah, that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys for tuning in. I do appreciate it. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe button if you want to stay tuned to another one of my forecasts. Subscribing gives you alerts for when I go live again, which will be most likely tomorrow afternoon or morning, and then tomorrow night, if need be. I mean, if this thing's still like a completely destroyed tropical storm, and then all the models start downtrending, then we might just do a nightly update, but we'll see. But yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in, and I will see you guys on the next one. Thank you, Erev, Blondie, and Help for helping out in the chat. And who was that again that did that? Who became a member? Yeah, thank you, Wayne, for becoming an EF3 member. That's a huge help out to the channel. And yeah, hopefully tomorrow we only have good news to report. See you guys then.